Happy 3rd of July, folks, the eve of 4th of July, and if you live in any other country but the United States, hope you're having a great week. But this is #AskGSM episode 553 here today for July 3rd, 2024. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are enjoying your holiday week, or like I said, just your week in general. And let's get right into your questions here. We have a ton of questions to get into, not a ton of time. So if you want to send in a question to the show, you can tweet me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself, and drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. So let's get into it here per usual, as is the case probably half of the time. I have not organized the questions yet, so if you hear your question one place and not consecutively right after the other, it's because I haven't organized them yet. But I think for the most part, looking at like my various social medias here, I think they're pretty much in order for the most part. But we'll start with the YouTube questions per usual. Micah Does It, their first question was, do you think the Bloodline 2.0 will get a new wise man, and who should that person be? That's a good question. I've seen some people speculating about that in the past week, and someone had joked Alejandro Estrada, whatever his name was, that was with Umaga back in the day. I think he was actually spent some time with Jacob Fatu, I think in MLW at one point when I wasn't watching the product like 4 or 5 years ago. That would be interesting. I don't think enough people remember Estrada to really give a shit about him being back. He's been out of the business now for like 15, 16 years. WWE fired him like 16 years ago. He was only on TV for like 2 years. And he was good, but I guess he was involved in MLW a while ago because he was involved with that, obviously. Funny side story on him. I promise this won't take 10 minutes. About like 10, 12 years ago. It wasn't 10. It was probably like 12 years ago. I was trying to do like branching into interviews and stuff for my then radio show, Save Us GSM, Spoilers, whatever it was called at that point. And I wanted to do an interview with Estrada. For whatever reason, I don't know. But I had found him on like Facebook or something. I had found his booking email, whatever it was. And I DM'd him on Facebook. And he didn't get back to me for like, not even like, oh, I'll give you an answer. But like, I messaged him and he didn't get back to me for the first time in like maybe 3 to 6 months. It was a long time later, to the point where like even a week later I forgot about it. But when he finally got back to me, I totally forgot I even messaged him. And he said no. Like, not even like nicely either. He was like, I have no interest or something like that. And it was like, so you waited 3 to 6 months to get back to me, and he probably just wasn't on Facebook or whatever. But at that point, why even bother responding? You know what I mean? Like, why even fucking respond? Like, and it's funny too, because like, who are you, Alejandro Estrada? Like, it was just so funny because it's like this no-name guy didn't want to do an interview, waited 3 to 6 months to get back to me. At that point, don't even respond. Just be like, okay, it was from 6 months ago. It's a no anyway, so why even respond? It was weird. So, I have a bone to pick with him a little bit, but I kid. So there is him. I don't think so. I had seen some people speculate yesterday, Jim Cornette. That's not going to happen. Solely for the fact that, one, he was a great manager back in the day. And two, he does have history managing Yokozuna, a fellow Anoa'i, from many years ago. I'm not saying Jim Cornette wouldn't be great in that role opposite of Paul Heyman. I just think in today's WWE, I'm not sure if he'd be a good fit. I doubt he would want to do it, first of all. I doubt he would want to do it. I don't know if WWE would... Like, the thing is, if he were to do that, he would probably have to stop all the stuff he currently does with his podcast and whatever. I guess Bruce Pritchard never really did. He still does that sort of stuff. But, like, I don't know. I just don't see that happening. I think that's extremely unlikely. He wouldn't want to do it. They probably wouldn't want him anyway. That's not going to happen. But it wouldn't make sense storyline-wise. Beyond them two, beyond those two people, I just don't see anyone specifically being a good fit. If they can find a good fit, someone that I'm not thinking of or people haven't really thought of, then maybe. As of right now, I don't really have any great ideas. Mike's second question, I have founded a new respect for Paul Heyman after taking that Shield powerbomb through the table on SmackDown Friday night. That being said, do you think Heyman, upon his return, will bring back Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns to team up and end up taking out his Bloodline 2.0 stable? Again, another thing I've seen some people talk about in the past week, I don't think so. I think whenever Brock comes back, he'll have nothing to do with the Bloodline. We have never seen Brock really align with anyone, as a babyface, as a heel. Even as a heel, when Paul Heyman was aligning, or rather managing, both Brock and Punk, and they were both being managed by Paul Heyman for a good 9-month stretch, they never even interacted. Paul Heyman would just, manage them on separate parts of the show. They weren't like teammates. Brock hasn't had a single tag team match in the entire time he's been back with WWE since 2012. Not a single one. Multi-man matches and stuff like that. He had a Money in the Bank ladder match that he won, a Royal Rumble and stuff like that. But he hasn't, competed in tag team matches, unless I'm mistaking or forgetting something, but I'm pretty sure he hasn't. So I just don't see that happening. I think on paper it sounds fucking cool, because you would think Brock still has some sort of, soft spot for Heyman. He still cares about him, wants to see him, avenge his betrayal of the bloodline, or whatever you want to call it. Roman Reigns, obviously, as well. We know, because the thing with Roman and Heyman was, they were still aligned. The last time we saw Roman Reigns, it's not as if Roman had turned on Paul. They were still together when we last saw Roman on TV back in April at WrestleMania. Brock we haven't seen with Heyman in a few years now, since early 2022, and even then that was short-lived. You'd have to go all the way back to like 2020 for their last like full-time reunion. I don't see that happening, although it would be incredibly intriguing. And I also think Brock and Roman together would fucking mop the floor with the new bloodline. It doesn't matter who they put in there. Even Jacob Fatu. If you have Roman and Brock on the same side, that is not remotely close to even. I think it's much more likely we see Roman reunite with the Usos to take out the bloodline than him reuniting, or rather just aligning with Brock Lesnar, which would be cool because of all the times they've feuded and whatnot, both as, one being a babyface, one being a heel, reverse the roles. We've never seen them ever align as babyfaces or as heels. That would be a great full circle moment for their feud, their decade-long feud, but I doubt that ever happens. His third question, what are your top 5 AJ Styles matches here in WWE? Another good question. I did a whole list of my favorite AJ Styles matches from pre-WWE on WrestleRant.com right before he arrived, or right around the time he debuted in WWE in early 2016. My favorite matches of his in TNA and Ring of Honor. But since arriving in WWE, my number one has got to be the SummerSlam match. I was there for that one of my favorite matches, period, that I've ever seen, let alone live at SummerSlam 2016. He beat AJ, or he beat Cena clean. Huge win for him that catapulted him to WWE Championship stardom on SmackDown, and the match was just great. Is it cheating if I say those 3 matches with Cena, the Money in the Bank one, the Rumble one, and that one, or do we just count that as one? I mean, there's been a lot of great ones, though. I think the Shane McMahon one was really, really good. I really liked a lot of the Jericho matches that he had early on. The Roman Reigns matches. Let's bunch the Cena matches together, because I don't want to take up 3 of the 5 spots with those. I didn't write these down beforehand. Didn't have the chance to prepare. But this match, or the matches with Cena, I would put as one selection. I would say the Shane match from WrestleMania 33. I would say... This is tough, because I don't want to put all my selections as like 2016, 2017. But I love that Roman match from Extreme Rules. Another match I was there for in 2016 in New Jersey. I was there with Mr. Marceau and his missus. That was a great show. It was a great show, but that was a great match. The Jericho match from Mania I really liked, from Mania 32. The Taker one from the Boneyard match I would put up there. Not a whole lot of other matches. I would probably say the Daniel Bryan match. It was on SmackDown during COVID. I mean, I'm going well beyond the 5 now. I can't really limit it to just 5, but he had a match that was 30 minutes long, 45 minutes long with Daniel Bryan on SmackDown at the Performance Center during COVID for the Intercontinental Championship, and that was when he won it for the first time and the only time back in 2020. 2019, the match with Rollins and Money in the Bank. I was there for that match. That was a, no pun intended, phenomenal match. In recent years, I'm trying to think, the LA Knight match at Mania I enjoyed. Trying to think of what else he's done in recent years. None of the tag team stuff with Omos. I don't know. I'm not really sure. I'm sure there are more matches I'm not thinking of, but those are the ones that come to mind. I enjoyed the RK Bro match from SummerSlam in 2021. Him and Omos versus, who was it? I just mentioned them. RK Bro for the Raw Tag Team titles. I enjoyed that match. So the Edge matches were good. They weren't like great. I wouldn't, count them among my favorites. I don't think I've gone back to watch any of them, but I did enjoy those. The 6-man tag team match he had at Hell in a Cell that year with Finn Balor and Liv Morgan against the Judgment Day, Edge's new group, was great. So there's been a lot of great AJ matches. I don't know if I can limit it to just 5. I think my more so favorite AJ matches would be the ones from like 2016, 2017. But he's had a lot of good matches since then. I don't want to completely, discredit him on that. Next couple of questions here from Chris W. on YouTube. Their first question was, he says, "Hey, Grim, hope you're doing great and wishing you and Alexa a happy 4th of July. I'm sorry about taking a vacation last week as I was having a writer's block and had no clue what to ask, but I'm glad to be back." Thank you, Chris, for being back and asking your questions. We always love having you. I love your questions, so thank you for coming on back. But you said, "I thought Forbidden Door was an immensely entertaining and quality show that, while a little too long and, as usual, had too many matches, over-delivered on the big matches, including that incredible main event between Swerve and Ospreay, the ass-kicking battle between Danielson and Takagi, the breakout performance of Stephanie Valkyrie, the great match with Toni Storm and Mina that continues the great story between them and Mariah May, the return of Britt Baker, and the fantastic ladder match with Jack Perry rightfully winning. Overall, I really enjoyed the show. What were your thoughts, and how would you rank it on a scale from 1 to 10? I'd have to go back and really, I know this wasn't your question, but I'd have to go back and compare it to the last 2 Forbidden Door shows, because I think on paper overall, those shows were better, which is wild, because like you said, I thought this was a really good show as well. It's rare for AEW to have like a mediocre pay-per-view. I can only name maybe 3 pay-per-views in the past 5 years that I thought were like meh from AEW, or just not that great. And even those shows weren't like terrible. They were terrible by AEW standards, but they weren't like awful shows. Yeah, I thought it was a really good show. I enjoyed the show for what it was. Forbidden Door 2024, that is. I think I would probably give it like a 7. I think that main event was far and away the best thing on the entire show. There was a lot of good action, but there always is. That's the issue. I think every AEW pay-per-view is so good that, I said the same thing about Revolution. I thought Revolution was an excellent show. I thought Dynasty was an excellent show. Even Double or Nothing was a really good show, much better than last year. So when every show is great, it's kind of harder for those shows to stand out. We're talking about how great it is now. Will people still be talking about how great it was 6 months from now? Probably not. But, in a bottle from this past week, it's still on the mind. I would say it was a very good show. I would probably give it like a 7 or something like that. I definitely enjoyed it on the whole, and I think that main event definitely bumped it up an entire number. That main event was amazing. Your second question: one of AEW's biggest complaints since the inception of the promotion is that the women's division was lackluster, or they were not given much to do, or many storylines on the show. However, this year has been a big change, as ever since the arrival of Mercedes Moné, there seems to be a bigger focus on the women, including 3 or more storylines spread out on 3 separate shows. Do you feel AEW has taken positive steps in improving their women's division? Yes, they have. I look at the run that Mercedes has had so far. From a character standpoint, it hasn't been like anything overly exciting or interesting, but she's had some really good matches. Like the Stephanie Valkyrie stuff is just temporary going into Forbidden Door. And like the feud with Willow had its like ups and downs and whatnot, but she's been doing some quality stuff. I think the better stuff actually in the division is not Mercedes Moné related. She's been good, and her promos have been pretty abysmal, I think, overall. But I've enjoyed like Chris Statlander's heel turn more. I've enjoyed Willow more overall. Even the Thunder Rosa Deonna Purrazzo feud didn't get a lot of love on Dynamite, but they had some good matches and have had some good matches on Collision, on the Double or Nothing pre-show. I think they had a pretty decent undercard feud. Again, didn't get a lot of attention on Dynamite or really where it mattered, but on those shows it's been good. The Toni Storm, Mariah May, Mina Shakira stuff you mentioned earlier has been very, very well done, and I'm not really familiar with Stardom and stuff like that, so they took a storyline or a group that but a lot of people who do not watch Stardom do not have any familiarity with whatsoever, and they got people familiar and to care about the story, and it's not even over yet. They're back on the same page, but how long will that last, blah, blah, blah. So I thought that was really well done, and they definitely have improved their overall women's division. Britt Baker being back is a plus. They got Thunder Rosa back late last year. I'm looking forward to Jamie Hayter hopefully being back at some point. She's been gone for over a year at this point, and that stinks. But Jamie Hayter is excellent. I'm looking forward to when she comes back, and she'll be a great asset to that division when she returns. So AEW, got to give them their props with the women's division. It's still not perfect by any means. A lot of the stuff they do just still does not feel as important as what the men do. Even Mercedes, like, it's not like they're closing out Dynamite with her. Collision and Rampage just don't fucking count. So let's not even bother with those shows. But, they could do a better job of highlighting the women as much as they do the men. But beyond that, I think they have done a very good job of turning things around, giving them more storylines, focusing on them a bit more on Dynamite, not just giving them the obligatory 5-minute match. And, just making people care is really the thing, which is great to see. Your third question. I love the last 2 weeks with the teases of Ospreay and MJF. The addition of Daniel Garcia in that great segment that started the show last week only piqued my interest, as this could lead to elevating Garcia as well as putting one of the top storylines. I guess I'm putting him in one of the... I guess that's what you mean. You worded it weirdly. As far as putting him in one of the top storylines for Wembley. Are you enjoying the MJF Ospreay stuff so far? And do you think this could lead to a huge feud throughout the rest of the year? Yeah, I think it's been good so far. I don't know what the plan is. I don't know what the idea is. Which is also partially a good thing, too. Because there's so many different directions they can go in with MJF and Ospreay and even Garcia. It's been nice to see Garcia spotlighted. He could beat Ospreay tonight. He could beat him tonight for that international championship. I don't think he will, but he could. I could see Ospreay retaining, and then Ricochet comes out, because Ricochet is a free agent as of Monday. And then you can have, Ospreay and Ricochet in an international championship match at All In, which is coming up in, under 2 months. They could start the build now if they wanted to for that match. I would prefer to see that personally. I did say at one point MJF and Adam Cole. I don't know if Adam Cole is going to be cleared by then. I don't think he will. But it would make sense to finally blow that off with a match between those two at the same show they faced off at last year. So that's what I would do. But I don't know if they're going to do that because I'm not sure Cole can. But at some point, like you said, MJF and Ospreay for the rest of the year. Whenever Cole comes back, they have to finish off that feud. I know no one really wants them to. We're sick of seeing it. It's old, blah, blah, blah. But they started it. I mean, MJF, I know, beat the shit out of Cole at Double or Nothing, and the rest of Undisputed Kingdom apparently had no issue with it because they've done nothing to MJF in recent months. They haven't targeted him. They haven't said anything. They just don't give a fuck, apparently, about their own faction leader. They do have to do one more match between those two at some point. Doesn't have to have any stakes, but they need to finish that off. So is it at All In? Is it later on in the year whenever Cole comes back, which, again, we don't know when that is? MJF and Ospreay would be a massive match for All In. But then again, does Ricochet come in for All In? Do you save Ricochet and Ospreay for another time? Do you do a 4-way or something with Garcia and Ricochet, which is, to me, just muddying the waters? I wouldn't do that necessarily, but you could. That's certainly an idea. But MJF and Ospreay, on its own, could be a marquee match for that show, which I would totally do because I feel like it would be a great match and a great story to tell. Your last question here, am I the only one who isn't completely sold on Liv Morgan's new gimmick? Honestly, I kind of find it to be cringy and a little too forced, especially since we should feel sympathy for her since she was taken out by Rhea Ripley and lost time because of it. On top of that, I don't want my Women's World Champion acting like a floozy on live TV, as I feel it's creeping right back into the Divas era territory, and it gives the women's division a bad image. Is it wrong I feel this way, and will it all eventually end after the feud with Rhea? As far as her acting like that, I would think, yes, it is simply short-lived for the storyline with Rhea Ripley and the Judgment Day. And I've said this before, I think she's playing that role exceptionally well. I do. I think she's in there doing great work, the best character work of her entire career. If she's out there attempting to sleep with the rest of the roster, after this feud is over, then I might have more of an issue with it. But it's really just the Judgment Day. She's not acting like a floozy, as you said, to everyone else on the roster. It's just for Dominic. It's definitely different than what they normally do. And here's the thing, too. This sort of storyline I typically don't enjoy. Like, just because Tony, Mariah May, and Mina had a 3-way kiss at Double or Nothing and the crowd went nuts for it, doesn't make it amazing. I mean, I thought it was not strange, but it's not exactly my cup of tea. And this storyline also isn't my traditional cup of tea. But not even the difference, but the similarities with those two stories is that they're stories, and they're good stories. So, I mean, you can go back to a lot of the stories in the Attitude Era that were not good stories. They were just floozies for the sake of being floozies, or just shock value with people just getting naked or attempting to get naked and stuff like that. That shit was just terrible. Like, it was terrible television, did the women no favors, did not put them in a very good light, or like having the men completely disrespect them, or whatever. Like having Trish, like there was no benefit to having Trish out there barking like a dog for Vince McMahon, other than just to put heat on Vince McMahon. I mean, that's really all that it was. And that angle was awful. Like, we haven't really seen anything like that so far. If anything, Liv is in control of Dom and not the other way around. So I've liked the storyline so far. I've enjoyed Liv's role in it. And you mentioned, I feel like it's forced because we should be feeling bad for Liv. But that's the whole point. They're doing a double turn. Liv is so... Like, the thing is, when Liv came back, she was getting good reactions. And honestly, that may have been the direction they were going in. Liv may have been the sympathetic one and may have been the one to beat Rhea Ripley for that championship. I wanted them to go in that direction, but they had to change course because Liv did legitimately injure Rhea Ripley. They went in that direction, and Rhea's gone. She was already getting cheered anyway. Rhea was always cheered more than Liv Morgan. So, I'm not even sure if Liv beating Rhea would have gotten this great reaction. It probably would have, but people like Rhea Ripley more. And I mean, Liv was kind of getting booed in some segments because people like Rhea Ripley so much. So they went the organic route by turning Liv and turning Rhea. I assume they turn Rhea when she comes back. So I have no issue with it. I've been really enjoying the storyline. Again, we'll see where they go with the rest of it. But I like what they've done with it so far. I think everyone involved is playing their roles exceptionally well. Emmanuel A. from YouTube, their question was, how do you feel about the way WWE teases tension with its factions? It seems like they've been doing more slow burn approaches to factions breaking up since the Bloodline. Example, Gunther frequently... I think you're talking about... you're just providing examples here. Slow burn approaches to factions breaking up since the Bloodline. And you're talking about like with the Sami Zayn stuff. And then the examples include Gunther frequently being disappointed in Kaiser and Vinci until Kaiser turned on Vinci, Bayley and Io Sky's relationship becoming gradually strained last year, Damian Priest occasionally being standoffish for the rest of Judgment Day, etc. How do you feel about this type of long-term storytelling? I think it's great because it gives you a reason to tune in every week. If you save the payoffs for like bigger shows, then it makes the lesser shows feel less important, would be my main criticism. You never want to feel like Clash of the Castle or Backlash or King and Queen of the Ring aren't important and are just worth skipping over because nothing important happens to those shows. They save the bigger stuff for the big pay-per-views. And the bigger stuff should primarily be saved for those bigger shows, but you can do bigger turns on Raw and on the B shows and stuff like that to keep people tuned in. And my only real nitpick of their approach to this type of storytelling, which largely has been great because it's such a breath of fresh air compared to when Vince was in charge, like when Edge got booted from the Judgment Day. Granted, part of that was because Cody got hurt. They needed someone on the babyface side. I get that. That was a reactionary move, but they literally went from being a cohesive, dominant unit to then having Edge get booted out of the group literally out of nowhere. And yeah, it's good for shock value, but yes, the version of Judgment Day that we ended up getting without Edge was better than the one with Edge, and, I was proven wrong on that because I was a little down on Edge being booted as quickly as he was, and the way that he was, I thought just made no fucking sense, and it didn't, and it still doesn't, but, they didn't really have a choice, but still, in a lot of cases, even during Vince's regime, they would just turn people for the sake of turning people. Now, it's not like Vince never did that sort of thing. They did do slow burns for Batista turning on Evolution, and I'm sure even when Orton was booted from Evolution, they had Triple H acting jealous of Orton, as he rose up to World Heavyweight Championship status and stuff like that. I wasn't watching back then, but I'm sure they did plant the seeds, maybe not over the course of 9 months, but over the course of, a couple of months they did do that. Batista, I know for a fact they did. So that was kind of more in line with what they did with Bayley and Io and that whole thing. So, yeah, I enjoy it. In some cases, it is a bit long in the tooth if you are waiting months upon months for a big payoff. But for the most part, the payoffs are worth it. They're satisfying, and they do nail it. So I can't complain too much. And I think their approach to storytelling under the Triple H regime has been overall really, really good. And it's paid off with some excellent creative and makes you want to pay more attention to the shows with the little Easter eggs and the subtle hints of dissension, and not even just dissension and tension within groups. I mean, a lot of it is similar, which I understand could also be tiresome. But, sometimes it drags on too long. But they do give you something to look out for every week. Whether it's significant or not now, it probably will be at some point, and it's cool to see. And, like I said, it's a breath of fresh air compared to what we were getting when Vince was in charge. When nothing really mattered from week to week, there was no long-term plan, a lot of reactionary moves, which was good for shockers and stuff, but sometimes those shockers did not make sense. At Jordan B. from YouTube, what is your favorite wrestling autobiography? For me right now, it's William Regal's Walking a Golden Mile. You want to know something? William Regal is my favorite wrestler of all time. I have never read his autobiography. I don't know why. I don't know how. I never have. At some point, I'm sure I will. I think part of it is I became a big Regal fan, like in 2008 when I started watching wrestling, and that book was from years earlier. So I probably should read it to learn more about his life. But I guess there was the fact that, it was written so long before I became a fan of it. So, nothing that I watched as a fan of his is included in that book, which is what always turned me off, I guess, as a kid from reading his book. But at some point, I'll have to go back and read it. I used to read wrestling autobiographies all the time. I mean, there's a couple book reviews here on the channel from, a few years ago. But, I read many autobiographies even prior to that point. I'm trying to think. Batista's was one of the first ones I read because I remember I did a book report on it, actually, for my freshman year of high school in English class. And I got an A on it. That was one of the highest grades I ever gotten. That kind of set a standard, set the precedent for doing more school projects on wrestling-related stuff. And I've gotten, I think, A's or B's on literally every wrestling project I have ever done. Paper I've ever written, for the most part, from high school all the way through, graduate school, grad school. So, the Batista one ranks up there as among my favorites. Say what you will about him now and whatnot, but Jericho is an amazing writer, and his books I always loved. His books are probably among my favorites, just a collection of all of them. Specifically, Undisputed? Or no, the third one. How many did he do? He did 3, right? So he did, the Lion's Tail one, which was before he got to WWE. And then, I guess it would be Undisputed. I think it was Undisputed, and then that was the second one. And then the third one was, I don't remember. Because then he did another one about 7 years ago. He did one a few years after that, recently, chronicling all of his books and whatever. I think that was his 5th one. I don't remember, but I think it was either the second or the third one that he did that I really, really enjoyed. All of his books I really enjoyed. I think Jericho's just a great writer. Mick Foley, too, I read his Lockdown book many years ago. I thought that was great. The Goldust book was good. I'm trying to think of what else. I've read a lot of wrestling autobiographies, like I said. I'm in the middle of Becky's right now. Daniel Bryan's was good. There's a lot. Even Pat Patterson's, I read and enjoyed that one. Really, any of them that have come out in the past 10, 15 years, I've probably read. I own a lot of them, and enjoyed a lot of them. Rey Mysterio's I liked. My favorites would probably be Jericho's, though. I'm sure there's others I'm not thinking of, but Jericho's I really liked. All of his, really. At least the first few, the second, third one, fourth one even. And Batista's. Just for the fact that I also did a book report on it and aced it, so that's good for something, right? Next couple of questions here, or just last question from YouTube, from Brandon A. He says, what's up, GSM? Hope everything is going well, as usual, and happy 4th of July. Here's my follow-up for WWE versus AEW Forbidden Door. I still don't have all the matchups finalized, but it is so hard to put everything together. Feels like a complicated puzzle, but it is fun to come up with the matches. This will be night 1 of 4. Assume the companies will produce a card every Saturday night for a month. I'm trying to follow characters as they are for the most part. There will be some exceptions to this rule. I also have missed a lot of AEW from late 2021 up until Revolution of this year. So there might be some gaps in my logic for booking, but I think this should work for the most part. Also assume wrestlers are uninjured. Your thoughts on night 1 with these matches in this sequence. Match 1, Sammy Guevara versus Carmelo Hayes. Match 2, the Judgment Day, consisting of Damian Priest, Finn Balor, Dominic Mysterio with Jada McDonough, not in the match, but in their corner, versus House of Black. Match 3, Hikaru Shida versus Asuka. Match 4, Pac versus Drew McIntyre. Match 5, the Usos versus the Young Bucks. Match 6, Jamie Hayter versus Rhea Ripley. And match 7, the main event, AJ Styles versus Kenny Omega. That is an excellent fucking show. I don't know what you have cooked up for the rest of the cards, but this one might take the cake. I don't really give a shit about Sammy Guevara, but that match sounds cool. Judgment Day, House of Black, perfect match to do. Shida and Asuka sounds like fun. Pac and McIntyre sounds great. Usos and Bucks. Yeah, I was thinking Usos and FTR, but I mean, I guess we've seen that before. We've actually never seen Usos and Bucks, so I guess that makes more sense. Jamie Hayter versus Rhea Ripley. Yes, fucking please. And AJ Styles versus Kenny Omega sounds great too. So, yeah, that sounds awesome. You get 2 thumbs up from me on that. No L from Facebook. Their first question was, do you see both Liv and Finn somehow costing Damian Priest the World Championship down the road? Down the road? How about as soon as Saturday and Money in the Bank? I think it could very well happen this weekend, and that's kind of my prediction, honestly. I think that we will see Finn, at least Finn, get somewhat involved in the Rollins and Priest match. With the idea being that Priest, if he loses, he leaves Judgment Day. But he kind of wants Priest to leave the group, because Priest had even planted the seed of dissension, and there's been dissension for a while, obviously, with the whole Rhea Ripley thing, Liv Morgan thing. Whose side are you on? And Damien's been a bit standoffish in the whole thing. With that whole thing, Damien even said, or after that whole thing, he had said, I don't need you guys. You guys need me more than I need you. So with that being said, they're definitely not going to be happy about that. Will the Judgment Day, and Finn even expressed his, disdain of that comment this past week on Raw. I could see Finn intentionally costing Damien the match. Maybe not Liv. She could get involved. I don't know, but maybe it's by accident. I think Rollins wins on Sunday. It may not be a slam dunk guarantee, and I think Priest and Gunther is a legitimate possibility for SummerSlam, but I think Rollins is winning that belt on Saturday, and Priest is gone from the group, and I think Finn may want that to happen to prove, hey, listen, you're right, we don't need you, or just to prove that we don't need you, and you saying that we do. I mean, I'm going to prove you otherwise by kicking you out of the group, by forcing you out of the group, by having Rollins beat you. So I think it happens as soon as Saturday. No L, their second question. Do the Wyatt Six, can they be a better group than the Nexus given better booking? I mean, honestly, they already are. I mean, I love the Nexus, but partially for nostalgia reasons, and partially because only early on were they booked well. And I think there are some misconceptions around Nexus. It was a lot of missed potential. That first night they debuted was amazing. The first night of the Wyatt Six was also amazing. But the difference is the follow-up with the Nexus was very good, but it's not as if they were the NWO. They were not Evolution. They weren't even the Shield. Like, all of those groups were better because they had better matches. Like, I can't remember too many great Nexus matches. Even the one at SummerSlam was good, I guess, but it wasn't, like, great. The Nexus didn't really launch a lot of careers. Heath Slater, Justin Gabriel didn't really go on to become world champion performers. Even Wade Barrett should have been world champion at some point during that run, and he was not. So, Daniel Bryan was, but I wouldn't really count him as part of the Nexus stuff. He was only involved on the first night, and then he got fired and then brought back. He was brought back as an opponent for them. So, yeah, I do think the Wyatt Six can, and in some ways have already surpassed the Nexus. In terms of, like, the follow-up, the Bo Dallas interviews so far have been great. So, yeah, I think they definitely can. The Nexus was good. I enjoyed the summer of Nexus, but it was a lot of the same stuff for a while, and it did make for good TV. The Bo Dallas stuff, even that so far has been more compelling. I don't know if it already is better than Nexus, only 3 weeks in, but it's certainly, like, not, it's not that far off. Let's put it that way. Next couple of questions here from Christopher L. He says, as I mentioned before, I was fortunate enough to be in Philadelphia this year for WrestleMania Night 2, and one of the matches involved Io and Bayley for the Women's Championship. And even though the crowd was quite tame for the match, it was great. It was great, and Bayley winning was a huge deal. Unfortunately, I feel ever since winning the belt, her momentum is kind of stalled, and she doesn't feel like a big deal as champion. In the triple threat at Backlash, it was basically the third wheel in a match that included the new coming star, more over than her and Tiffany Stratton. I feel like Naomi was the third wheel, but whatever. He then says, then she was in a small feud with Piper Niven, and now she does not even have a match in Money in the Bank Saturday. Do you see Bayley's title run, whatever, for whatever it is, or do you see it as a disappointment? It's been good. I don't think everything has to be great. Not everything has to be awful. I mean, it's been a good run. It has not been amazing. It has not been awful. I mean, yes, can you make the argument she's lost momentum from how over she was pre-Mania? Yes, you absolutely can. But it's not as if she hasn't defended her championship. And they also know she's already defended the belt at SummerSlam against Nia Jax. So she doesn't really have a whole lot to do in the meantime, because why would she? All the focus right now is on the women's Money in the Bank ladder match. Everyone's trying to qualify for that. Nia Jax is waiting on the back burner to face Bayley at SummerSlam. So coming out of Money in the Bank, the focus will be back on Bayley and back on Nia Jax to, kick off that feud for SummerSlam. So I really don't have an issue with her not defending at Money in the Bank, because she just defended at the last pay-per-view. Some people do defend on consecutive shows. Sami Zayn did, and has for the last couple of pay-per-views. Liv Morgan didn't defend at Clash, and she's also not defending her championship in Money in the Bank, which I guess is a problem. They could have put Liv and Zelina on that show, but they didn't. With Bayley, I have no, qualms with her run or any concerns or whatever, because I think she might lose it to Nia anyway. It hasn't been a great all-time run, but it hasn't been awful either. It's been perfectly fine for what it is. His second question, when Mercedes Moné came to AEW, she got a mixed reception of fanfare and fan criticism. She was praised for her star power, but was heavily mocked for her bad attitude, overrated in-ring ability, and having a major ego backstage. We've entered her 4th month within the company. I have to ask you, do you think her run so far has been a success, or do you think she was overhyped and has yet to live up to it? I mean, she was hyped pretty heavily, but Mercedes Moné, Sasha Banks, whatever you want to call her, is a star. Do I think she's a grander star? Like, do I think she's a star in the grander scheme of things, like as far as Hollywood and shit? She isn't now. Could she be? Yes. I mean, she has more mainstream appeal than any other woman on the AEW roster. I mean, that goes without saying. She gets me more mainstream attention from that sort of stuff. But I have yet to see this massive, breakout role for Mercedes in acting that people guaranteed that she would get post-WWE. I have yet to see. That one movie she did that was not The Mandalorian was fucking awful. I watched it. She was not good in it. She was not a great actress in that movie. So maybe there's another movie in the works that she's working on. I don't know. But, yeah. As far as, her run in AEW, it has been good. I mean, she became TBS champion. She's now the New Japan Strong Women's Champion. She has yet to lose a match. The first 2 months of her run, she certainly was overhyped to do nothing. They waited 2 months for her first match. That was a bit excessive. Otherwise, wait to bring her in or have her wrestle before that. That was just ridiculous. I don't know if she was hurt or what, but that was just dumb. But ever since she did have her first match, she's been a great addition to the show. Having matches, her promos have been mildly better. My biggest criticism is you got to make her a full-fledged heel. She acts like a heel sometimes, but not all the times. It's fucking confusing. Just turn her heel. She is much better in that role. And just let her shine. And I think she'll do much better work from there. The next question. Dijak has finally left the company after being there for 7 years, if you could believe it. As I stated before, he was talented in the ring and good on social media, but he had the charisma of wet paint, and his character work was terrible in one note. Now that we know why he decided to leave, do you think it was wrong of him to send info to dirt sheets? So just to kind of elaborate on that it was not why. First of all, he did not decide to leave. He did not leave. They did not renew his contract. He would have stayed had they offered him a good deal. It's not like they lowballed him. They didn't offer him anything at all. That's the first thing. The second thing is, he was not let go because he gave info to the dirt sheets. That was clarified by him. That was clarified by Fightful, who we did the interview with. I mean, first of all, I'm sure there's a lot of people in that company that give Fightful and other dirt sheets info, and it's never anything creative either. Creative plans do not come from talent. I think Sean Ross Sapp had clarified this. And there are other people that the company is well aware talks to Fightful and stuff like that, and they don't let them go. So they don't let people go over talking to dirt sheets. I doubt that had anything, if very little, I doubt it had really anything to do with his release. Maybe there's a whole other side of the story and he was just fucking terrible, or he spit in someone's coffee. I don't know. By all accounts, he seems like a great dude, a great worker, and they just didn't have any plans for him, so they let him go. From my perspective, that was why they let him go. There's no elaboration in the WWE side. They never really elaborate on why they let people go. But to me, that's what it looks like. But I think Dijak, I don't know, personally, yeah, was his charisma up to snuff with other people on the roster? No. But I think his character work in NXT did improve a lot. He had a great run in NXT. And here's the bottom line. They did not even give him a shot. And I don't count that first main roster run because that T-Bar shit was fucking terrible. But as Dijak, they never even tried. They rehabbed his image. They gave him great matches. The guy's an awesome worker. He's one of the best big men in the world. The shit that he can do for a guy his size is incredible. They never even let him get a shot on the main roster. They let him go before he could even debut on Raw. They let him go. So again, like the whole point, like you asked, what was the point of the NXT run? It really wasn't it did benefit him. It helped his career post WWE because he's going to get more bookings now as Dijak than he would have if he was just still T-Bar. He would have been Dijak when he left WWE if he left like 2-3 years ago. But his career was in the toilet. At least now his stock has risen considerably. He was obviously there to work with the younger talent, put them over, and that's great. But they should have taken a chance on him, a shot on him on the main roster, and they didn't. And I think letting him go was a big mistake. Again, do not even try. That is a big Vince move. They didn't even try, and that's probably the most disappointing part of it to me, personally. His next question, so after watching the Death of WCW documentary, I can say that I enjoyed it. However, one of the things that I have noticed is that while it does bring up the many stupid mistakes made by management, it seemed like a good portion of it was a pity party for Eric Bischoff, making it seem like he was the victim in all of this, when the truth is, a lot of the problems that were taking place were right in front of him was mostly his doing. While not everything was of his control perimeter, I still find it laughable to believe that this man still does not take much accountability for many of the problems and the Lions Den mentality he brought upon the WCW locker room. What do you think? Yeah, the documentary, I reviewed every episode here on the channel, so if you missed it, check it out. We really did not learn anything new. If you knew about WCW's demise and lived through it and watched the WWE documentaries and the dark sides and stuff like that, you really did not learn anything new from that Who Killed WCW documentary. I did enjoy it for what it was, because it was basically 4 episodes, around 4-ish hours, of all of these WCW guys basically burying each other for an hour each episode. Blaming each other, oh, this person was responsible. The executives were responsible. These wrestlers were responsible. These so-and-so, the fans were responsible. No one really said that, but WWF ruined WCW and all this other sort of stuff. I thought Bischoff actually showed some accountability for some stuff, which surprised me, thinking, yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that in retrospect. But like him, and Nash is great because Nash doesn't really give a fuck, but even him in certain scenarios, he was like, yeah, it made sense for me to win the world championship. I was fucking over. Like, even the finger poke of doom they thought was a good idea in retrospect. Russo is Russo. I expect nothing less from him. Or he thinks, yeah, I would change nothing, bro. I would do all the same stuff I did back then, bro. I was 80% more over than the performers themselves, bro. And all this other dumb shit. Yeah, it did feel like a pity party for Eric in some parts. And even the end, they kind of focused on him. To close out the entire show, Nash was kind of praising Bischoff. And Bischoff watched back the comments that Nash made about him, and he started getting emotional because they got to him. They were really nice. Maybe people don't say nice things about Eric often or whatever. He said a lot of dumb shit. A lot of people on that show said a lot of dumb shit. Goldberg said dumb shit, but he was also funny in different parts. It was a lot of people saying a lot of dumb shit is really what that show was. And WCW really killed itself. I forgot who it was, Brad Siegel maybe, who said it on the show. But WCW was always going to die. I think the Turner stuff and the merger really just accelerated the process. When you look back at the creative of what they were doing back then, it was really more a matter of when than if. I mean, numbers were down, buy rates were down. Eric can say all he wants about them allocating the debt to WCW that Turner or whoever was dealing with at that point, and they just kind of allocated it towards WCW rather. They can say that, and I'm not saying they're wrong, but I mean, that's a mere small factor as to why WCW died. Maybe, again, as quickly as it did, but in the general grand scheme of things, WCW killed itself. I mean, that's just the short and sweet fact of it, is that the creative was just fucking terrible, and it was going to happen eventually. At Reborn Again from the Twitter machine, at John Ritland from Twitter, and on YouTube. Find him on YouTube, Real Honestly with John Ritland, does great work. His question was non-wrestling related, but since we are halfway through 2024, what would be your 3 best and 3 worst movies of the year so far? Side note, I'm currently at 146 movies for this year so far. Holy shit. And John does great work. He also reviews them on Letterboxd. He has his channel where he reviews movies. I talk about him all the time, but he does great work. I can't give him enough of a shout out and praise him here. But yeah, I feel like it's funny. I feel like I've seen more bad or underwhelming movies this year, or at least that I thought were underwhelming or whatever, than I have like truly great movies. I don't have the list in front of me. I didn't have a chance to prepare, like I said earlier. But the one that I saw in February, Argyle, was lame. That was not really that good of a movie. It was okay. We enjoyed parts of it, but overall it was underwhelming. I'm not a big Dune guy. I thought Dune 2 was better than Dune 1, but I didn't think overall it was great. I actually saw Wonka this year. That came out last year, but I saw it this year. That was the first movie I saw this year. I didn't think that was really all that good either. So like to start the year, the first few months, I saw a lot of like lame movies, I thought. Trying to think of other movies that I saw this year. I like Planet of the Apes, The Kingdom for the Planet of the Apes. I saw that. I like that. What was the one that I saw? I saw Shrek 2 in theaters. I saw Phantom Menace, but those are like obviously re-releases. I'm trying to think of what else I saw this year. What have I seen in the last month? I saw something not that long ago that I thought was pretty good. Oh, we saw Inside Out. We saw Inside Out 2. That was probably the best movie I've seen this year, to be perfectly honest. I'd have to go back and really look. And I also kind of forget what I saw in streaming and stuff like that. Like I watched Hitman. I thought that was decent. I didn't love it as much as other people did, but I thought it was solid, I guess. I know, John, you didn't like that movie, but a lot of people, I guess, did like it. And I was kind of in the middle. I was like, okay, I enjoyed parts of it. Overall, didn't love it. Probably wouldn't watch it again. Yeah, I'm honestly, I can't think of many, like, great movies that honestly stand out as far as being like, wow, that movie was really, really good. Like, stuff like that. I haven't seen the Day One movie yet, the Quiet Place movie. I might be seeing that. Maybe tomorrow, actually, I might see it. Twisters, I might see just because Alexis wants to see it. I'm looking forward to Deadpool 3 later on this month. And then I think there's another movie that comes out after that I might see. Potentially, we'll see. But yeah, there really hasn't been like a lot of like blockbuster movies. We try to go at least once a month to whatever's out. But a lot of the movies just aren't that great. So those are some of the ones that I saw. I feel like a lot of them really weren't great, and I've seen more, some of the weaker movies more than I have movies that really blew me away. His second question, is there anything that can be done to get Tony Khan to cut down on the runtime for his pay-per-views? Doing 9 a year with most of them featuring 12 to 15 matches ain't it. Listen, if people keep raving about these shows, they're going to keep doing it until an overwhelming majority of people complain about the runtime or the amount of matches. They are going to keep doing it. By all accounts, Forbidden Door, people were not dissatisfied with the amount of matches they got and how long it was, because they were really up for the main event, which honestly surprised me. The main event was amazing. That part didn't surprise me. But for the fact that it was almost a 6-hour show and people were still going nuts for shit by almost midnight. And, I mean, that was on the East Coast, too. It wasn't even like it was West Coast time, like Double or Nothing was a month ago. It was East Coast, started at 6:30 Eastern and ended around midnight. So almost at midnight on the dot, actually. And it was a very good show. I'm more of a fan of less is more. I am. I mean, you can call me a WWE shill or whatever, but I like the 5, 6, 7 match format more than I do 12 to 15 matches. And you can't really compare it to like the WrestleManias of old. One, these shows aren't Mania, so it's actually more understandable for a one-night Mania to have 12 matches. But the difference there, though, is that like Mania 35, for example, I mean, it wasn't that great of a show. Like a lot of those matches weren't good. They weren't well-paced. Forbidden Door, by and large, was well-paced and had a lot of great matches compared to WrestleMania 35. So, I don't know. I just prefer less is more. I always have. I like the takeover format. We're getting it now at the main roster shows. I assume they go bigger and grander for, like, SummerSlam. I know we're getting a 2-night SummerSlam at some point. So they might try to do. I'm curious how many matches they're going to do at SummerSlam this year. It might be 8, which would be fine. I don't know if you could do 5 for a bigger show like that, but would they do 5 and 5 when they go to 2-night SummerSlams? Would they do 6 and 6, 8 and 8? I don't know. I guess we'll find out come the first 2-night SummerSlam next year or the year after, or whenever it is. Like we said, there's really nothing they can do to cut down on it, because if Tony Khan's adamant about it, and they've been doing that for a long time now, where it's like a 4 or 5 hour show, these pay-per-views, they're not going to move away from it unless people start complaining or the shows don't do well and they find there's a problem with it. So far, they haven't. It's just we're the minority of people that aren't in favor of it. But he might be, and he might have said this publicly, he might be more of the mindset that wants to give people more for their money. Because if you're paying $50 for a show, he wants to give you as many matches as possible. I don't necessarily see it that way. I think quality overruns quantity, in my opinion. But if that's how he wants to do it, listen, he's the promoter. He can do what he wants. At noob_un_co-TV, his question was, who do you think will win the men's and women's Money in the Bank ladder matches? I'm going with Tiffany Stratton winning the women's briefcase and Drew McIntyre winning the men's briefcase for storyline purposes. I agree with both. I don't want Drew to win, but I think he will. Jay was my pick before Drew qualified. I think Drew's going to win to cash in and then lose via Punk interference, which I think is just so unnecessary. I know it's furthering the story, but Punk and Drew is already hot as it is. They don't need the failed cash in and waste a fucking briefcase on that shit. It's stupid. Tiffany winning makes perfect sense, though. I agree with both picks. We'll go into more depth about my Money in the Bank predictions tomorrow on the podcast on WrestleRant Radio, so check it out. At the Average Grunt on Twitter, their question was, what is the most recent year of your life that you feel nostalgic for? That's a good question. Non-wrestling related, obviously. If it was like wrestling related, like what year do you feel nostalgic for? Probably no year in recent memory. But like any year in general that I would feel nostalgic toward, like recent year, I guess what your definition of recent is. Honestly, anything post-COVID to me, not in a bad way, but anything post-COVID kind of blends together. Like anything from 2021 through now, and COVID's still going on now, but like when the majority of lockdown was happening, I think of 2020, and it was still happening in 2021 as well. But like I'm thinking 2021 through current day, a lot of the stuff that I've been able to do, experience, whatever, just blends together. It's been just one giant chapter. So, I mean, a lot of that stuff honestly doesn't feel like it was that long ago, that I was doing even 3 years ago. So it's hard to say that I feel nostalgic towards any of that, which is weird because my answer might be actually 2020, which is such a weird answer to give. And, it was a pretty bad time for people getting sick and stuff like that. I don't want to jinx, nothing to jinx, obviously, but I was never, to my knowledge, ever sick with COVID when it happened. And, I got vaccinated and shit like that the following year. But when it first broke out, I was fortunate enough to never get it to my knowledge, and I probably did at some point, and I just wasn't aware of it, I'm sure. But I never got it. But I think even early on, it was such a surreal time with everyone being inside and home and just wrestling. Like, I would say probably 2020, because that was such, a surreal time where everything was closed, and I was a lot less busy because of it, but then I got really busy with like doing the interviews and stuff like that, and that kind of kicked off where we are now, which is cool. But yeah, probably 2020, honestly. There are some parts where I feel like nostalgic towards the very beginning of the lockdown, where again, everyone was home, no one was doing anything, nowhere to go, really nothing to do, except watch wrestling and like consume content and shit and stuff like that. It was just a surreal time. So probably 2020. And if not 2020, maybe, I don't know, 2017, 2016. I am nostalgic for like SmackDown 2016. But beyond that, that wouldn't be exactly recent because that would be 8 years ago. Next question from @Ebagu91. Their first question was, do you see Seth freaking Rollins, and you put freaking in your question, winning back the World Heavyweight Championship this Saturday? I do. Again, that's in my predictions on the podcast for tomorrow. But I do see Rollins beating Priest, probably with Balor interference, to cost Priest a spot in the Judgment Day. I think Rollins will win. I think Rollins and Gunther is the sexier match to do at SummerSlam for the World Heavyweight Championship. I just feel like that match makes more sense. In the Balor interference, like I said. So, yes, I do have Rollins becoming champion on Saturday. His next question, do you see Jacob Fatu as a future world champion in WWE? I do. The fact, as soon as they scooped him up, anything becomes possible. Because the question always was, were they willing to sign him? For a long time, it didn't look like they were. We went to jail at one point. They don't like to hire people with records and shit. They have before, but sometimes that might be a reason why they don't. And maybe they had to see if they could trust him, if he got in any more trouble since then, and he hasn't, to my knowledge. So as soon as they signed him, anything became possible. The just untapped potential, sky became the limit. And then some for Jacob Fatu in WWE. And already he's presented as a big deal. He just completely bypassed NXT, as did the Tongans. But with Jacob Fatu, he didn't necessarily need to. He could have gone to NXT first. I'm glad they didn't. I feel like that would have been dumb. Put him right smack dab in the Bloodline storyline. That's exactly what they did. He's fucking amazing. So I'm glad he's getting that opportunity. And I think at some point, hopefully on the sooner side of the next couple of years, he can be a world champion in WWE. His third question, your thoughts on the pairing of timeless Toni Storm and Mariah May. I think they're a phenomenal pairing. And, Tony Khan is a long-term storyteller. Sometimes the stories don't really go anywhere, or the stories aren't interesting, or they moved at a snail's pace. And WWE is guilty of that too, like we talked about earlier. But the Toni Storm and Mariah May stuff has largely been entertaining. They have remained relevant. Tony's still champion. And they've made a new star to Mariah May, who had no prior experience in any major promotion beyond Stardom. Like not in TNA or not in WWE or even NXT or whatever. Mariah May came from Stardom. They brought her in and she immediately became perfect for the storyline as the understudy of sorts for Toni Storm. And they play their roles exceptionally well. The Mina stuff was well done. All the other feuds that Tony's had along the way. Her matches are becoming more of matches, and Tony's always been great in the ring, but for a while there, she was doing more gimmick shit. Like shit that the matches themselves weren't great. They were more smoke and mirrors, but she's had actual matches so far in recent months anyway of her reign, and they've been great matches. So if they can stick the landing by having May beat Storm, and I don't know who turns on who, probably May turns on Tony. If they can stick the landing by having May win the Women's Owen Hart Cup, and then she wins the women's title at All In by beating Tony, I think then it could be considered one of the better storylines that AEW has ever done, especially over the course of like 9 months to a year. At E1-3A, their question was, how much interference do you think there will be in Money in the Bank? I think there's going to be a lot, especially in the men's. The overall pay-per-view, there might be a lot, but we talk about this on WrestleRant Radio for tomorrow. I could see the Wyatt Six getting involved and targeting Chad and or Jay. Logan Paul getting involved and targeting LA Knight. I could see Punk getting involved and then costing McIntyre's cash-in, or just the match itself, getting involved in the ladder match. Maybe even AJ Lee is a possibility at some point. Yeah, I mean, I'm not really... I feel like there's going to be a lot. I don't know how much. I hope they really limit down. And you're talking about the matches. You're talking about the ladder matches. I'm thinking also like even the other matches on the show, like with Balor getting involved and Priest and Rollins, and the Bloodline interference in the six-man tag team match. There could be a lot of interference in this show, and I hope they pick their spots and don't overdo it, because that could become overkill. His second question, do you think WWE and AEW are predictable in their booking? Yes, sometimes to a fault, sometimes to their benefit, because predictability isn't always a bad thing. If it makes sense and it's entertaining and people are satisfied, then it's cool. Like even Money in the Bank, I feel like it's not entirely predictable. I feel like a lot of those matches are... anyone can win some of those matches, which is cool. So, yeah, they are predictable, and for a lot of their major shows and how storylines play out and stuff, but they do throw in a lot more surprises than you would expect. And because it's formulaic booking a lot of the time, but I would rather have that than, spontaneous booking, and we don't know what the fuck's going on. You sometimes got to react to shit in the moment and then do stuff on the fly. Not everything can be planned out a year in advance. Sometimes you have to go off of crowd reactions and current circumstances and stuff like that. But as long as, if you have a general idea of where you're going and book on that, and it's not entirely shocking and it's more so predictable, that isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like I said, if it makes sense and it's compelling / entertaining. At Tom Van Dam 769505, he asks, who would you have more confidence in as a promoter? The guy who beats Swerve or the guy who beats Priest? At Cage Side Seats was just presented with the question, forget who is booked to win, just which one means more. I mean, whoever beats Swerve. I mean, if you're not talking about who it is, because I think Rollins beats Priest, and I don't know who Swerve is losing to. I thought it would be Ospreay, not a Forbidden Door, but at All In. I don't think it's going to be Ospreay at this point. If Ospreay's not in the Owen Hart Cup, I don't know who it's going to be. But probably whoever beats Swerve, because the AEW World Championship, to me, means more than WWE's World Heavyweight title. I mean, I think there's more of a comparison between the WWE Championship and the AEW World title, but the World Heavyweight title is relatively new. It's clearly the B title behind Cody's belt, if you really had to Damian Priest is great, but Cody's a much bigger star. That's just a fact. So I would assume whoever beats Swerve will be the bigger star. Now, Priest could lose it to Gunther. I have more confidence in him than whoever beats Swerve. I mean, if Bryan beats Swerve, he's retiring, so that's like a one-off moment. If it's Hangman, I have confidence in him, but is he really the future? Like, we've already had him as world champion. So honestly, I don't know. I'm going to say Swerve, but you said it doesn't matter who is booked to win. So I'm going to say Swerve, but just because of the face of the entire company. And with Priest, he's just the face of one brand. Last question from that Bill Meister, 88. Bill getting his question at the last minute. He says, Graham, apologies that this is too late. It wasn't, so thank you for sending it in. But he said, I have to get your thoughts on Paul Heyman's attention to detail for the Bloodline storyline, not only last week, but throughout the run. Is he the best ever non-in-ring competitor? There's certainly a case. I mean, Heyman's done a great job of this over the course of his career, and he's done this whole, not dyeing his hair and staying up all night to get the bloodshot eyes and shit like that. He's done it several times, not even throughout the Bloodline, but really throughout his entire career in the past couple of years alone. He did it with Brock Lesnar at one point, 5-6 years ago. The attention to detail is great. Heyman's just outstanding. And the fact that he's still great in different ways, even all these years later, is awesome. Because for a long time, it seemed like he was getting stagnant. He would come out and cut the same fucking promo for Brock Lesnar that he would every single week. And there was nothing different about it. It was the same shit every week. But now he's switching it up, and he's remained relevant with the Bloodline stuff and constantly changing sides and getting people guessing and having great exchanges and his facial expressions. He's phenomenal. So is he the best ever non-in-ring competitor? Yeah, honestly, he might be, especially for how long he's been around, the Hall of Fame career that he's had. We're talking being a GM. We're talking being a manager. We're talking behind-the-scenes stuff and everything else in between, an advocate, whatever you want to call it. Heyman he's excelled really at everything that he's ever done. Commentary too, he's had an on-air presence for over 2 decades, 25 years or whatever, if you include ECW. And he's always excelled in whatever role he finds himself in. So I got to go with Heyman. He probably is the best ever non-in-ring competitor. And if he's not, you could say Vince, and obviously in light of recent stuff, it's tough to say Vince, but Vince was always an amazing character on television, especially early on. But I might even go Heyman over Vince, because even Vince, towards the last 10 years, the guy was just looked fucking decrepit out there. At least Heyman's done consistently great work in the past 25 years. Vince fell apart after fucking 06, 07, 08. Early on, he was the best heel ever. But as time went on, he just got old and wasn't really as fun anymore, obviously, from an on-air standpoint. Heyman has just always been great. And he's not great every single segment or storyline, but he's largely been a compelling character for the past 25 plus years. So I would probably go Heyman. He's amazing. And that's going to do it, guys, for today's edition of #AskGSM, episode 553 here today. Thank you guys for sending your questions, as always, here in this holiday week. Hope you guys are having a great week, and we'll tune in next week as well with a new batch of questions. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below on the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Have an awesome one, folks. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Have a very happy 4th of July, or just a great Thursday, I suppose, if you're not observing or enjoying the holiday. And I'll catch you guys right back here next week. Till then, take care, guys.